Dude, I was making so much noise this morning. I don't know what's wrong with me. I was like hacking up a lung.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like an allergy thing or whatever, but I had like a sneezing fit, and I kept trying to clear my throat, and it just wasn't going so good. I don't know what the hell was going on.
Shoot. Did you get any element this morning?
I have not had any elements.
Oh,
Me neither, actually.
That's what's going on.
No, actually, me neither. You know, the funny thing is, like, if you, like, when I go through my day, if I haven't had electrolytes in the morning and I do feel like a little bit of fatigue by the middle of my day, I'm like, oh, I can usually be like, I didn't have element, so I'm probably not as hydrated right now. I'm probably a little bit low on sodium, magnesium, potassium. You can feel the difference.
You don't look low on anything, bro.
I do.
You look like you're doing good. Look like you're doing all right.
Thank you.
Do I still look high?
Right?
Still look hot. Oh, that kratom being back is amazing.
You know what is a big issue is like this time of year when it gets cooler outside, you just think like, I don't need to drink anything. I don't need any liquids.
That's true.
And I got to tell you, it's been more often than not that I cramp up more when it starts to get colder out than I do in the summer. In the summer, it's like you're so thirsty all the time. You're like, man, my body temperature, I feel hot, and you want to drink quite a bit. And so kind of hard to stay on top of it in the wintertime. But luckily, we got Element. You throw that shit in your coffee, you're good to go.
And the cool thing, too, what I've found is like as I've started supplementing electrolytes, too, especially at the beginning of this year, I drink less overall water. Because I used to drink a lot of water, pounding water, because I'm like, I'm thirsty. I wasn't necessarily just thirsty. I was literally electrolyte deficient.
Damn, we need to have that salt guy on here. I keep forgetting about him, but I got a salt guy.
Nice.
I have a foot guy, too. That we can get to the bottom of some of these things that we need to just like know more about. But there's a lot of information about. It's not so much about just the water intake. It's also about getting in the right amount of electrolytes. And Floyd Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather actually said in an interview one time, he's like, a lot of these guys are out there just drinking water all the time. He's like, water dehydrates you. And people are like, no, what is he talking about? That's the dumbest thing ever said. And he's like, no, when you drink too much water, it'll start to dilute your electrolytes and you can end up with cramping. And he's 100% correct.
Yeah, and he's only considered the best amongst
Come on.
some.
It's like just ridiculous how good he is.
Yeah, not even close. So you guys really got to get hydrated correctly. Head over to drinklmnt.com/powerproject. Do what we do. Get a value bundle. So you're going to get 4 boxes, 4 different flavors, whatever you want, or you can even get the same flavor if you want. And you're only going to pay for 3 of those boxes. No code needed. Just hit the link down in the description as well as the podcast show notes. And again, that's at drinklmnt.com/powerproject.
Awesome, man. I'm excited to play this clip from Rogan. It was really cool to hear Rob Kearney and Joe Rogan talk about me and my bro on the show. And I just thought it was interesting how much attention Joe Rogan's paying to both of our Instagrams, where he like knew some facts and he kind of had a rebuttal to something that Rob Kearney said. So let's play the clip. Let's check it out.
Nothing to do with diet, nothing to do with anything.
No.
That's what's crazy. They say that, and I don't know if this is accurate, but they say that ketogenic diets are very good for preventing cancer because there's something about cancer needing glucose to grow, whereas ketones, cancer doesn't grow on ketones, but your body can function better.
I mean, it makes sense, Yeah. You think fat grows with glucose, so why wouldn't something else that's a little bit more anabolic?
Yeah.
So it makes sense physiologically.
Yeah.
I like carbs.
Oh, well, I could imagine.
Yeah.
When you do that kind of work, I mean, is there anybody that tries to follow a keto diet that does powerlifting or strongman type stuff like you?
I mean, like, you have like Mark and Chris Bell. They do like the carnivore stuff.
Yeah, but they take carbs. I see those guys. They're always eating apples and shit. Chris eats a lot of fruit.
Yeah.
But they're they're just doing it for aesthetics. They just look good. They lift weights, and you're involved in like serious competition with other gorillas that are trying to pick up super heavy shit.
Gorillas.
Yeah, I would imagine like carbs are almost necessary.
Yeah. I mean, they're a staple in like every meal.
What is your standard diet? Like a standard plate for you? What do you eat?
Typically like anywhere between 1 to 2 cups of rice, depending on the time of day and where my training is at. 8 to 10 ounces of meat, and then some veggies.
Yeah, Robert Ober said that he's basically rice and meat. Like
Yeah.
that's the primary. Is that most
Very
strongmen?
vertical.
It's like
It's
where
the
I see
easiest
it.
way to get the calories and the nutrients in, right?
I think we're good right there. Yeah. Awesome, man. A lot of great things there. First of all, huge shout out to World's Strongest Gay, Rob Kearney. Thanks for hitting me and my brother up. Thank you so much for giving us that mention, giving us some props. And then Rogan, it sounded like there's some like a little disdain in his voice when he said that. And he's like, those guys are eating apples and shit, like as if we're like, we're fake, right? I'm just kidding anyway. But
All right, confess to all the carbs you've been eating in secret.
I know.
So many carbs.
Damn it. I know, he blew the top off everything. Now that I'm out of the closet, I got to just be eating pizza all the time, I guess, right? I just thought it was really cool that Rogan's paying that much attention to where he has seen my brother and I shift with our nutrition. We talk about it a lot in the show, and we're big believers that your nutrition should shift around a bit. It could be relatively the same, or you could go back to similar principles all the time, but why not enjoy some different diets here and there when you have different goals? I want to clear up something, though, too, is that I did not use a ketogenic diet or even like a low carb diet to get as strong as possible when I was powerlifting. I think that's a kind of a misconception. I think that people think that I did that. If I did put that forward at any time, then maybe I misrepresented myself at some point. I did write a book called The War on Carbs, but The War on Carbs was after I was done lifting the big boy weights in the super heavyweight class, and it was when I wanted to come back down in weight. And I did so with a ketogenic diet. But people might not realize is that I did use the ketogenic diet while still being dead center in the middle of my strongest times and in the middle of my powerlifting career, where I squatted 1,080, benched 854, deadlifted 766. But I wasn't leveraging the ketogenic diet in training to get that strong. I used it strategically as a reset here and there. I used it after competitions to lose weight and to feel good. And being that big is just unhealthy. So a lot of times I was like, it's great that I was able to achieve these 1 rep maxes on the platform, but now I'm very like unfit and I'm very fat. So let me see if I can fitness myself a little bit. And so I would walk and sled drag and do GPP type of work, do a little bit of cardio type stuff. And I would go on a ketogenic diet. And nearly every single time I'd lose anywhere between 10 pounds all the way up to about 30 pounds. I would really try to dump water weight. I would try to get rid of excess body weight just to be healthier, just to feel better.
One thing that I think is interesting is that, I think Rogan and Rob during that episode, they mentioned how there's no one at those levels or in those sports that are doing a ketogenic diet, right? And let's broaden it a little bit, because I think when people think about keto, there's also low carb, right? Because if you're eating some carbohydrates but you do enough expenditure, you can still actually be in ketosis. So let's kind of broaden that. Athletes not being able to compete or do work at a high level with low carbs. There's kind of it's like a mind virus thing that goes around, especially within fitness, where that's a commonly held belief, not just by athletes, but also by researchers with what they've seen in terms of the research and athletes being able to perform. And that belief kind of is just widespread. Even though we've seen a lot of people, us ourselves, like pretty low carb, performing at a pretty high level in what we do, we see it. But even like I believed that there was a point where I was eating a lot of carbohydrates and I was like, I need this. And there's no way I could do this without the amount of carbohydrates I'm eating, which is like 300, 400, 500 grams a day, right? Like Andrew, we were just on a walk and you said something that was super interesting about your buddy with the protein.
Oh, yeah.
I want you to mention that real quick, because that falls in line with what we're talking about. Yeah,
absolutely. I was just helping somebody out, and he had heard something somewhere sometime in the past, and for whatever reason, this is the one thing that stuck. But somebody told him somewhere down the road that if you have too much protein and you don't exercise, that protein just turns into fat. And because he heard this, he was a little weary of having like a protein shake, or like me saying like, no, go ahead and load up a little bit extra on the protein just so that way you get full and you don't have to worry about too much. And then his first thought was, I thought if you have too much protein, then it just turns into fat. And so it was just like, wow, it's interesting that he had this thought. And I'm just was thinking like how many other people think that, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the reason why I wanted you to mention that is because that belief was kind of falling into your friend's bias, because your friend didn't want to really do healthier things. Like, he still drinks his beer, etc., which is probably worse than eating more protein. But that belief about protein, now he doesn't have to take that action. For me at the time, when I was eating a lot of carbohydrates and I was performing pretty well, I was also eating a lot of foods that weren't the healthiest, but I could fit them in because I enjoyed these foods. So that fell into my I had a bias because I like these foods. I don't want to get rid of them. I need these carbs to perform. All these other athletes eat a lot of carbs to perform. So there's no way that I could perform being low carb or keto, which after I started doing those things and I performed even better, it's not the truth.
It's really hard to determine like what really helps with performance. It's like so hard to tell sometimes. Rob Kearney looks a lot better nowadays than he did when we interviewed him at the Arnold maybe about 2 years ago. And he's still competing at a high level. Yeah. He's still competing in World's Strongest Man. He just did the Rogan Invitational. I think he did pretty well. He's not a huge guy in comparison to how he's a huge guy. Sorry. He's not a huge guy in comparison to how big some of these monsters are that do World's Strongest Man. But he's still able to perform really well. He actually, for a while, was in line with trying to break one of the records in log press. So he's a very strong athlete. But I would imagine right now that he probably changed his diet when he's talking about eating, steak and rice and meat and rice and things like that. At least it didn't appear when we saw him last time. It didn't appear that he was on maybe that regimented of a diet. So it'd be interesting to have him on the show again and have him talk about what's the difference. Like if he did clean his diet up, because I got to personally admit, and this is just my own evidence of what I've done. I didn't notice a benefit from trying to eat super clean while doing powerlifting. So the way that I ate when I was powerlifting, yes, I eat meat and rice and stuff like that, but I also would eat McDonald's. I would also eat pizza. It wasn't a horrible diet. Like if most people kind of saw what I would eat, they would just kind of be like, holy shit, it was kind of a lot of food. And I would eat like bagels, and I would eat hot dogs, and I'd eat like certain things.
Those calories.
Where there's a lot of calories. Ice cream, maybe 3-4 times a week. I might even have because I might be a little bit more regimented with the meat and rice type thing, maybe on the weekend, I would just say, hey, just do kind of whatever. I might have burrito and things like that. And so it's a really interesting thing because you hear so many people talking about inflammation and all these different things. That was never really my experience. But I also will admit, maybe I didn't clean up my diet enough for a long enough period of time to really see what optimal really was. I just thought, and maybe it was a virus mind that I was having, where I thought I found what was best for me. And I was going to kind of put that forward and kind of ride that out. And maybe I did want to have that as an excuse a little bit to, Stan was coming around at the time, and he was talking about his nutrition, and he was talking about the vertical diet, which is basically meat and rice. But I didn't maybe do it for long enough to have it give me exponential benefit over just kind of eating crappy food.
Absolutely. And that's the same thing for me currently, you know what I mean? Number one, I want to mention, guys, that if you switch to any different diet, there's going to be a period of time where you need to give yourself the time to adapt to the new type of way your body's going to be working off the food you're eating. Because if initially you're an individual that was working off of high carbohydrates, and maybe you're doing a lot of CrossFit or a lot of cardio-based workouts, and you're working with a lot of high carbohydrate, your body knows how to use glycogen, mainly glycogen, even though you might be having some fat. But now if you're going to a place where you're intaking a lot of fat and much less carbohydrates, your body has to now get used to using that fat as one of its big fuel sources. So it takes a while But when you get used to it, then it doesn't really feel that bad. But what I was going to say was I did notice a big difference in terms of not just not necessarily my output as far as performance, but more so my ability to have a better body composition. So I got leaner over time in a much easier way, right? And I was still able to keep my performance very, very high. Now, there are some times where, like, if I have a competition that I'm going to do at jiu-jitsu, right? The night before, I'm going to have a good amount of fat and a decent amount of carbohydrates to get me fueled up for the next day. But before I compete, I'm not going to have a high carbohydrate meal. You know what I mean? I'm going to probably keep the meal pretty minimal, have it be fats, maybe some protein, maybe a tiny bit, like some electrolytes, maybe a tiny bit of carbohydrates. But it's not going to be like the way I used to compete before these things, where I'd have a breakfast that had a good amount of carbs, etc. Because I know that I don't work as well when I have that in my system. But that's the difference now. I'm able to maintain a leaner physique while putting out good output. And your physique got leaner too, and you're able to maintain that with the new diet that you're on.
The other thing too that I'm failing to point out is, like, when I was that big and eating that often and eating that amount of carbohydrates, first of all, my carbohydrates still weren't crazy because I just have never been that crazy into eating tons and tons of carbs, even though there was some junk food in there here and there. I was just more lethargic. I was just more tired. I didn't have as much energy.
Same.
I would hit my workouts up, and I would usually kind of like need a pre-workout to like kickstart me to do my stuff. And at that time, I didn't really have any of the shit going on that I have going on now. I mean, I had my wife, I had my kids, but I didn't really have much in terms of like a formal job. I didn't have a lot of responsibility. I guess I'll just say that. My main focus was just to figure out how to lift more weight. But even with that, I was still, even though I wasn't doing a ton, I was still pretty fatigued. And the biggest difference between me now and then, yes, I did lose a lot of weight, but I also shed off a ton of fatigue, all the way to the point where it's extremely rare. I don't even really get tired. I mean, it sounds weird, but it's and I don't sleep well. Like I've told you guys a million times, like I sleep somewhere between 5 and 6 hours, most of the time.
And then you just wake up, right?
I wake up and I feel fucking awesome every single day. I don't have any noticeable signs that I would like to continue to work on trying to improve my sleep. But with the way my diet is, and I've heard Corey Gregory talk about this before, where his diet and training, everything feels good, to the point where I think he only sleeps for like 4 or 5 hours. So in terms of it improving my like strength on the platform or whatever, I don't really know, because I didn't really eat that way. But if I lost significant amount of weight during that time I was powerlifting because of the diet or because of the nutrition I was utilizing, I would have lost strength. I would have had to make a decision to go down to perhaps a different weight class. I could have also recalibrated and ate more food, but I don't think there's really any good reason, if you're bodybuilding, powerlifting, or whatever it is you're doing, I don't think there's any reason to go like zero carb. I don't think there's a lot of great reasons to, unless specifically you're trying to like cut weight. So I used it for cutting weight. As I mentioned earlier, I used it as like a reset. I don't think there's any reason to get dogmatic and say, hey, boom, carnivore diet, like this is going to be the way, and I'm going to be a world champion in bodybuilding. You could do that, but I would just say in most cases, it just seems like you're just making something a little harder than it needs to be.
Is there a certain level when an athlete achieves where this low carbness goes out of the window? I ask that because what I usually see in the comments anytime we have a video about keeping carbs down, whatever it may be, it's always, well, Jay Cutler, it worked for him. It worked really well. So I'm going to just do what that guy did because it seemed to work out really well for him. And I mean, we'll ignore that there's one Jay Cutler in this world, but yeah, does that make sense where it's like once you reach a certain level, fasting goes out of the window? And I guess I'm just focusing more on bodybuilding. Fasting goes out of the window, low carb goes out of the window because we need, like you said, Nsima, like we need this glycogen because I'm going to hit a heavy workout and I need to pack on the calories, et cetera, et cetera.
I think in most cases when we're talking about people that are already starting out heavy, is they don't need nearly as much food as they have kind of trained their body and mind to believe. That doesn't mean we just like all of a sudden go and just rob yourself of 1,000 calories a day. That is not going to work out the way that you would like it to. It's going to be too difficult to maintain for any period of time. You would be kind of surprised and shocked at like what your body could run on once you start getting into fasting and once you start to reduce your carbohydrates. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have any nutrition going on, but if you get in 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, you get in about half of that amount for fat. Now your carbohydrates don't really matter as much. You can use those as leverage to do certain intense exercises, but you got to keep in mind someone like Jay Cutler, the output that Jay Cutler has is just was astronomical, you know, and the pace that he would work out at and the amount of overall work. I mean, just to like, I know he would do squat. I know he would do leg extensions every single time he worked out. This is for leg day. And I know he would squat every time he worked out. So he would always start every workout with leg extensions. He'd pre-fatigue, pre-exhaust. Then he was going into squats. And this wasn't like, oh, he's just going to handle 225 and do some pause squats or something. Handling 5 plates. He would do leg presses. He would do lunges. And I'm not even aware of some of the other stuff that he would do in a given training session. But there's like 4 or 5 exercises where he's going. I mean, watch the videos of the guy training. I don't really think. I mean, there's very few people in the world that train at that level like that with that intensity. So Jay may have kind of stumbled upon something that worked great for him, and you hear the rumors of the 1,000 carbs a day. I mean, who knows how long was he doing that for years on end, or was this like a period of time? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things to consider, but also just consider the fact that his output is absolutely monstrous, and then also consider the amount of muscle mass. That guy's body is chewing up calories all day long because he probably has 280 or 270 pounds like lean tissue going all at one time.
Yeah. So,
Jesus Christ, fucking jacked.
And also, I mean, okay, so Jay, 2 things. It's interesting because Rob was mentioning how like bodybuilders, they're not necessarily performance athletes. They do get on stage, but when you look at this training, this is hard fucking. This is strength and it's hard fucking training, right? So maybe when they're getting into contest shape, their training volume goes down, they get a bit weaker. That's when they're not eating as many carbs. But when they're training and they're putting on muscle, they eat a lot of carbohydrates, right? But the second thing also isn't there something that like at the NPC level, IFBB Pro level, don't they take things that allow them to use like shuttle like carbohydrates burn through it?
Yeah,
right?
they'll take insulin.
Insulin, right? So we can't use use Jay Cutler necessarily because like, are you out here using like, because some people do mention that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know some people mention that, right? But are you out here taking insulin? Right? So
maybe
some people, but most people aren't.
And I do find it interesting that people will point to maybe just it's because it's popularity, but like there's very little people arguing for the other side, like someone like Robert Sikes. It's like, right, I'm gonna go 0 carb because abusing it the other way. They're like, I'm gonna go all carb and eat 1,000 grams just like Jay Cutler, and then there's nobody saying like, I'm gonna go 0 carb because it's working out for Robert Sikes very well.
And Robert Sikes looks amazing.
Yeah,
it looks incredible. Right. Our Cole Robinson, who we've had on the show before, who yells and screams a lot about fasting and intermittent fasting and just basically how people eat way too much, which I actually agree with the message in a lot of ways. I do think that people eat way too much. And it's something just to be like mindful of at some point. If you are overweight, you're going to have to figure out a way to eat less, which is a pain in the ass. But what he'll say oftentimes is, if you're getting in the amount of protein that you need and you utilize some intermittent fasting, you don't need nearly the amount of fuel that you thought you did. However, it will always be of benefit to you to add in something within a few hours of training. So I know like we love fasting, but it can be a little bit more beneficial to you to eat something either the night before. I'm talking about before, as in like it could be hours before, it could be the night before. You're going to increase your performance a little bit by doing that. You're also, if you are going into workouts, just I guess like fully nourished. You're going into your workouts fully nourished. You're going to recover from your workouts even better. Not only will the workout be better, you'll be able to lift better. You'll be able to perform better. You might be able to work out a little bit longer. You'll actually recover from these workouts a little bit better too. So those of you that get obsessed with any one of these dogmatic things that you can get obsessed with, even if it's somebody that is way into fasting, if you have a small meal, you eat like an apple or a banana, and you have a protein shake at 2-3 hours before a training session, it's going to benefit you a lot more than just going into a lot of these workouts cold. Does it mean that you can't get used to fasting? Does it mean that you can't have great results fasting? Does it mean that you will never prefer to work out fasted? It doesn't mean any of those things. It just means that if you have a little extra boost and you have the nutrients, you have access to the nutrients that you need during your training session, you will feel better and perform better.
I'll say this too, kind of what Mark was mentioning there. As if you're an athlete, it's very hard when something's working for you at that moment in time and you're making progress and you're doing okay. There's very little reason maybe to try to pick up something else, like, oh, maybe going low carb, maybe trying some fasting. If everything's just like going great in your head, you're like, why? Why should I try this? And the thing that I would suggest sometimes is like, if you're not getting ready for a competition and maybe you're far away outside of doing another competition, it might be a good idea to try some new things, because potentially these things could take you to a different level. And this is something to think about. Yeah, something's working for you, but what if something could work better? And if it does, cool. But if you do it and then it doesn't work, you have more reinforcement for what you're currently doing, because I gave this thing an honest shot for a good while, for a few months. It wasn't working well for me. I didn't see any benefit over time, so I stopped. Right? Or you could be on the side of like, I tried this for a few months, I made a few changes, and a little bit of fasting here and there, or maybe lowering my carbs just a little bit, maybe using mainly whole foods, etc. Maybe that helped my appetite more. I'm able to control my appetite more, and that's been helping with that. Maybe it's just a little change, but it could either help you have a small increment, or it could be a pretty big positive change. So it's a good idea to give yourself some time to try some shit out.
I like that you said mind viruses earlier too.
I think I got that from Gad Sad.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
He what's that book? I only went through half.
He's been
of
on
it.
Rogan a bunch.
He's been on Rogan a bunch, but I got that phrase. It was Gad Sad who talked about it, because there's a whole thing about it. But yeah, it is a mind virus, because you hear a lot of people that are coaches, a lot of people that are athletes. There's this thing, and my coaches, even when I was younger, soccer coaches, etc. You got to have some pasta or some carbs before you train. Carbs before you train. It becomes something that's like, this is just what you do if you're an athlete.
Yeah, and what they thought wasn't coming from like a place of like being 100% incorrect. We know that you burn glucose when you exercise.
Yeah.
When you're in motion, and so therefore you would think, oh, well, let me just load up on a bunch of this stuff. But your body can adapt. Your body can adopt new things, and you can take your time with it, and you can learn how to utilize these other types of diets to your advantage. Just kind of in finishing this up and wrapping it up, keep in mind, we know that you're going to try to come at us with like, this guy does this way and he's amazing, and this guy does. We know all that, and we are aware, that there's like Dominic D'Agostino, who fasted for 10 days and then deadlifted 600 pounds for 10 reps.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of cool stuff out there. But would Dominic D'Agostino be able to lift 615 pounds for 11 reps if he had a couple of meals in him? Like, probably would be a little easier, right? Like, just, I don't know, might be easier, right? So there's many different diets and many different ways of doing things, but I think that people tend to get really stuck on like there's just this one way of doing things, or this guy does this way, and so now I'm gonna follow exactly what they're doing. But in terms of keto, I don't think there's a lot of reasons to do a ketogenic diet unless you really want to, and unless it's going to be something that assists you in getting towards your goal. For me, some of my goal in the past has been figuring out ways to manage my calories. That's what it did for me. It helped me to manage my calories. Intermittent fasting helps me manage my calories. Now, is it helping in every other aspect of my life? Not all the time. It doesn't have a plus for every single thing. So if you're fasting, or if you're eating low carb because you're trying to lose body fat, but it's not playing into you being able to have the best workouts possible, that's only at the moment. It's only momentarily, and you can get yourself back into maybe eating some carbs when you feel like you're in the shape that you want to be in.
And again, that's where Element actually helps a lot. Like if you're a low carb athlete, you notice the electrolyte difference. Like, people always wonder, oh, how do you perform, etc. Electrolytes make a big difference. I'm not cramping up. It's like, it makes a very big difference. So again, I know we mentioned it at the beginning of the episode, but we ain't playing when we're talking about electrolytes.
And also quality of meat from
Piedmontese.
I got some Piedmontese waiting for me at home. They got those ribeye caps. Freaking amazing.
Dude,
they come out so good.
Dude, the kebabs.
Oh, yeah.
The kebabs.
Those are legit, right?
kebabs.
Yeah. You said they're made of like what like
I think it's
ribeye
made out of like filet and ribeye, and I need to have them actually tell me. I forget what they said. But whatever the case is, it's super tender, right?
It's super fucking tender. And guys, we're not playing around when we talk about Piedmontese. The cool thing about them is that they have a lot of different cuts of steak, which is great. But they have steaks like the flat iron that are low fat, super high protein. I think it has like 6 grams of fat for 80.
It's like 46 or something like that.
46 grams of protein.
And then like 4 grams of fat.
Yeah.
But then also the center cut ribeye, which you hear ribeye, you're just like, if you're on a low fat diet or you're on a traditional high carb bodybuilding diet, it's like, oh, steak. I remember that stuff back before I started lifting. It's like, dude, no, this stuff. So this center cut ribeye has, hopefully I don't mess this up, it's like 60 grams of protein and only like 5 or 6 grams of fat for the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's my favorite cut right now. That stuff's so good. They call it the Nebraska cut ribeye. That one's so good.
But they also have cuts that are, if you're not someone who's low fat, you don't have to be. They have a lot of high fat cuts too. So you have all the options with some amazing steak.
Yeah, just the traditional ribeye. Really good.
Tell them how they can get hooked up.
I can. Yeah, it's over at Piedmontese.com. And we're not just going to tell you how amazing it is. We're going to help you save 25% off. Again, that's at Piedmontese.com, Piedmontese.com. At checkout, enter promo code PowerProject for 25% off your entire order. And if your order is $150 or more, you get free 2-day shipping. Again, links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes. Whoop-bam.
Want to take us on out of here, Andrew?
Sure thing.
You got it?
Yeah, thank you everybody for checking out today's episode. Let us know what you guys thought down in the comments below. And if you're on iTunes, go ahead and just leave us a review. It's been a while since we've been asking for it, but when we do, you guys really show up, so we sincerely appreciate that. And also, please follow the podcast at Mark Bell's Power Project on Instagram, at MB Power Project on TikTok and Twitter. My Instagram and Twitter is at I am Andrew Z, and on TikTok at the Andrew Z. And Nsima, what's up?
And Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube, and Nsima Inyang on TikTok and Twitter. And for all y'all on YouTube, you guys have been showing up hard in the comments. We appreciate you for the algorithm. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think about what we talked about today. Give us your input on dieting. Mark?
I'm at Mark Smelly Bell. Strength is never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch you guys later.